Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Terry and Frank Show. As you know, we have a surprise inside every one of these. Today is a good one. I'm Frank Warner. I'm the founder of People Productive. We help companies absolutely get the best out of their people by most effectively using the time, talent, and energy of the workforce. Tara?
Hello, I'm Terri Mays, and I'm a certified culture engineer with focus on bringing out the people side of business.
So, as you know, we've been focusing on the human factors of leadership. This is what, episode 17, I think. It's been a great series. It's an education. There's no question about it. The human side of business has been a blind spot for much too long. There is an awakening. The shackles are coming off. People are beginning to realize they need to know more about the human equipment than they do about their processes and technology. So today we're going to talk about cognitive science. The brain is obviously where all the work is taking place. Nothing could be more important. And we're going to focus on the Miller experiment from 1956 and what are the implications of that for the workplace today. So I will share a screen quickly. There's an incredible amount of information out there about this. Here is a paper. It's actually a public paper you can get it on the government. NIH, George Miller's magical number of immediate memory in retrospect. This was originally published under the Psychological Review, but it's out on the NIH. And so this is a really good paper to look up. You could just type that in, you'll find it right away. It has an abstract and then gets into tons of different research going back to Miller, what happened, and most importantly, what really has happened since then on this topic. I think it's a really, really good paper. Take a look at it, but we're not going to read a paper here today. We're here to just chat about it. So Tara, why don't you tell us about the Miller experiment?
Right. So the Miller experiment is really just about understanding the capacity of short-term memory. The human can only contain so much information in short-term memory. And what you don't want to do is overload that person. So in this experiment, Miller determined that a person can only contain 7 items, plus or minus 2. So if you are looking to share information with a person, you want to make sure you're staying somewhere in that 5 to 9 item range. You don't want to overload them because their short-term memory will just get so full and they won't retain all the information that you're trying to share with them. So this is very critical in how you relate in business. And when you think about the number of projects that people have to juggle and just the amount of information that you receive on a daily basis, people are receiving information and then they're prioritizing that information based on how they receive it. And some things stay in short term and some things move into long term. So it just depends on how that person is processing the information and how they're prioritizing it. So as a leader, you want to make sure that you're eliminating as many distractions as possible and you're giving them the most important things to focus on first. Mm-hmm. Because remember, they're only going to grab the first 5 to 9 items, depending on the person. It varies for each person. They're only going to grab a very small number of items. So you want to make sure that you're putting the highest priority items out there first and not giving them a whole bunch of distraction.
Yeah, now this ties into many of the things we've talked about. One of the episodes was on selective filtering, how 98.4% of everything going on around you is filtered so your conscious mind doesn't have to deal with it. And it has to do that because the conscious mind has such limited capacity. We're going to talk about processing capacity in the next episode, but today it's memory. This working memory of 7 items plus or minus 2 has been known for a long time. Miller proved it, but AT&T did early experiments when designing the phone system to try to figure out what the optimal length of a phone number was. Because in order to maximize how many phone numbers they could have, they had to create a structure that would allow the most numbers to exist. So they wanted to get the longest number of digits. And Miller also talked about chunks. So if you take a number like 908, 507, 4329, that's 3 chunks. And even though it's 10 digits, people can easily remember those 3 chunks. And the 7 digits for the primary number without the area code. But this design, has lasted well over 100 years. and it's still in use today. So you're talking about incredibly well-researched design tied to human capacity. There are many, many things that are impacted by this capacity at work. So Terri talked about, being conscious of this when you're, sharing information with people. It also means if you're going to share something longer, you want to summarize. Here's 3 key things that you should be
Right.
aware of. 3 is a great number. 7 is the most common number if you want to maximize what they can remember. Some remember 9, some only remember 5. But, using this knowledge to get people to focus on what matters is what this is really all about. You want to have demand management. You don't want to have people with 20 things they're working on, because they can't. It's impossible. This is why things slow to a crawl when leaders actually try to design work based on the amount of things they got to get done, not on the people doing the work. And you see this just slowing down work all the time, right, Tara?
Right, right. People can only do so much. And what you don't want is a bunch of things done poorly. You can have poor quality in your work and get a bunch of things done, but that's not going to benefit the company. That's not going to allow you to have success in the marketplace if you've got a bunch of low quality in production. What you want to make sure you're doing is focusing in on those things that are most important so that you can put the quality into those few things that are important, because nobody can do everything. There have been times when I've been on projects where there's just too many things to keep up with. There's too many details. So you have to determine which items are most important and then focus in on those things, because you can't do it all.
Yeah.
And humans are just not designed to be able to multitask as much as people think that they can. The human brain really does not work that way. You'll work on one thing and stop and work on something else. And people call that multitasking, but that's not the same as the way computers function, where they can actually work on 2 things at once. Humans
Yeah.
really just cannot do that.
Hey, look,
So,
we're multitasking. No,
yeah,
you're unproductive.
right, right. It just
I mean,
slows
that's what
down
it boils down to. Come on.
productivity. It slows down quality. Everything just gets bad as you start trying to increase the ability of a person beyond that 5 to 9 range. You really are just asking for trouble. So it's important to focus in on the priorities, set the direction that you want to move in, and then focus in on those few things that need to get done. And then as you begin to complete those few things, you can add in a few more and a few more, but you want to do them in smaller chunks. Chunking is very important. That's something that we all learned as kids. We learned how to group things together so that we could memorize information for tests. We learned how to make up silly songs and phrases and different things like that so that we could remember acronyms or remember any number of things that we've had to group together in science class or in math class.
Great example, Tara.
Please, what is it? Please something, my dear Aunt Sally. I can't remember. But, please excuse. That's it. Please excuse, my dear Aunt Sally. All of those are just methods to help you remember things that you need to remember. And it puts the priority is there. The emphasis on the most important things are first, so that you begin to focus in. And that's just the way that the brain is wired. So that you focus in on those things that are most important first. And then those things that are not as important can wait. And as a leader, you have to absolutely know how to balance this out so that you're not overloading your people and giving them much more than they can accomplish. And because that then, once you can't do it all, then you feel like you failed. You feel like you didn't meet your manager's expectation. You didn't do everything that you should have done, but you were really set up to fail from the beginning by giving you more than you could humanly do. And so as a leader, you don't want to put people in that kind of a position. You don't want them to feel like they're set up for failure right from the start because they have too many competing priorities.
This is absolutely, without a doubt, a leadership skill. You've got to understand what the capacity of the people is. And we've covered a bunch of these. There's decision fatigue. There's a limited amount of energy to make decisions. That enters into this equation of how to orchestrate the work, how to run a good meeting, how to communicate, how to plan tasks and activities out, how to make sure people aren't overloaded. All of it plays into what the capacity of the human mind is and how to
Yeah.
best utilize it. So if you want to use the time, talent, and energy of your people wisely, you need to understand how the equipment works. That's it. There's no other question about it. Everywhere else, you need to know that. And you're a leader. And actually, as an individual contributor, just planning your own workout. All of these things matter. It's super important. You want to make sure that you're working on, 2 or 3 things. You can move fast. You can get through effectively. You can keep certain things, in your conscious mind and manage them. So this is key to running an effective workplace, because work is built around the human mind. Let's face it.
That's right. So don't overload your people. Make sure you're putting the first things first. Stephen Covey taught us all about that, putting the first things first. Put the big rocks in the jar first so that you're able to accomplish more, because you focus on what's most important, and then those smaller things that don't matter as much can come a little bit later. And help your people with that priority. Sometimes it's easy to think that it should be obvious what the priority is, but sometimes it's not. So make sure as a leader, you're not setting people up to fail from the beginning by giving them too many tasks at once.
Avoid the fog of work. The fog of work when
Yes.
people have too many things going on to really consciously keep track of them, and it starts to create a brain fog. That's what this is. If there's a fog of work in your place, you're causing it. You need to make sure you orchestrate what people have to do. Avoid the fog of work. Keep people highly productive, focused. That is what the most effective use of talent is. That creates a much better work experience for them. They'll become more deeply engaged. They achieve more. The organization is orchestrated properly. You're moving ahead as fast as you can because you're accomplishing things in line with what is capable of being done, not what you want to get done, what's actually capable. What is the capacity of the organization? There are other capacities we'll get to, and we'll talk about those. We're going to cover one next week. So by all means, tune in. This is the cognitive science part of our show, and I think this is just vitally important, quite honestly. You need to know this. It's not that complicated. And I'm glad you came here to find out. So listen,
Yes.
join us next week. Terri?
Yes. Thank you for joining, and like and subscribe. Share it with your friends.
Yeah,
This
please.
is really good information that we're sharing, and we'd love to hear your feedback. So leave us some comments. Join us on Wednesdays live for 4 p.m. Eastern for the Frank and Terri Show. We are just excited to hear back from you.
Yeah, we are. And thanks for reminding people, Terri. I forget sometime. But yes, smack that bell, subscribe. We love having you here. Share this. This is so important. Work can be so much more pleasurable for everybody if it's built around humanness. Anyway,
Yes.
time to go. So look, we'll see you at the next episode. Take care.
All right. Bye for now.